Blog Talk Radio.
Choices, decisions, frustrations, and pain. Knowing I'm going to forget her someday. While I still can, I'll challenge all my loved ones, every friend, to look inside their hearts and understand that I will love them. I will love them while I still can.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay. And before we get started today, I always just like to tell everybody who Alzheimer Speaks is and what we're about, because we get new listeners around the world all the time. Alzheimer Speaks is an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. And we believe by joining forces and sharing knowledge and having these everyday conversations about life with dementia, we can remove the stigmas that are attached to memory loss and help those living in the trenches with this disease take back their lives and live with purpose. Together, we can help everybody understand the true needs of this disease and remove those myths and stigmas. At our core, we believe that we can battle this disease. We're stronger together. All of your clicks and shares and likes with the show have been so powerful. So I encourage you to do that, because Alzheimer Speaks isn't about us. It's about all of us. And when you like us and tweet us and share with your LinkedIn groups, or you can even embed these shows onto your Facebook page or onto your websites, please feel free to do that, because you're allowing others access to this free information and best practices that we're gathering all around the world. And by your clicks, and by those just taking those couple of seconds, you allowed Alzheimer Speaks to be named the #1 influencer online regarding Alzheimer's, according to ShareCare and Dr. Oz. So I want to thank you all for that, and I ask you for your continued support. And know that those clicks are being heard and they are making a difference. One of our major goals is raising awareness, and so again, this is a way that you can help us and partner with us by working together. Because I'm a firm believer that we just can't keep scaring people about this disease. We have to bring them hope, and we have to show that there is life and compassion out there. If you haven't visited our main website, which is alzheimerspeaks.com, I encourage you to do that. There you'll have access to all our other platforms. We have a blog. We do a webinar series called Dementia Chats that's free to the public and businesses as well. People are using those for training. You can get to the YouTube channel and so many other things. Also, my programs for keynotes and training are on there as well. Now, the show is really critical because what we do here is we bring everyone's voice to the plate. And so we'd love to hear yours today as well. And you can join the conversation very easily by utilizing your chat box and making a comment, or you can call in live to the show. And that number is 714-364-4757. That's 714-364-4757. And when you call in, you can either call in by Skype if you're using your computer, or you can call in on your cell phone or landline. You will be asked to push 1 just to get into my queue. And when there's a break in the conversation, I will definitely pull you back in to our conversation here. I want to always mention, people are always looking for support, so I always like to mention Alzheimer's Disease International. They are the organization of all the Alzheimer's associations around the world. So if you're trying to find one close to you, you can either Google Alzheimer's Disease International, known as ADI, or go to www.alz.co.uk. And then people are also asking about trials a lot, and there is a study, a Tau study available right now, and if you just go to www.alzheimersstudies.com, that will get you to the Tau study, so I encourage you to do that as well. Today's going to be a fun show. We're going to be talking about caregiving coaches and how can they help you with dementia if you're in that battlefield, if you're in that zone. And I think we're going to have a really fun, interesting conversation. Our first guest is Mary Brett, and Mary is the founder and CEO of Brett Coaching and Consulting. Her work has always been about encouraging, exploring, and creating life awareness by helping others create life strategies that enable them to grow and create new norms. And I like that, creating new norms, because dementia really mandates that with us. So I'm looking forward to talking with her more about this. Mary has lived and worked in Japan and England and throughout the United States before retiring from a civil position with the federal government. Each place, she says, inspired her to reach out and create strategies not only for individuals but agencies to help them reach their highest potential. As a consultant, learning to think outside the box allowed her and her clients to grow not only professionally but personally. Later on, she had a wake-up call that encouraged her to further her education in coaching, and the opportunity enabled her to transition her previous skills in nursing, counseling, psychology, and social work into a coaching and consulting businesswoman. So Mary's practice focuses on working with families and caregivers, especially those that are caring for loved ones who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. She's trained with the Alzheimer's Foundation, and she's facilitated a caregiver support group for over 2 years where she's gained so much experience and knowledge. But she's also living with a husband who has dementia, and that has been a true laboratory, I'm sure, for her. Mary has also published a couple of books and several articles, and she's very well respected in the industry. I'm thrilled to have Mary Brett with us. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Lori. It's nice to be here today.
Well, I'm just thrilled to have you on the show. Mary and I were able to talk a little bit prior, and it was very fun to get to know a little bit more about this woman. I love one of the quotes you had sent me, which was you said was one of your favorites by Maya Angelou, that says, "Stepping into a brand new path is difficult, but not more difficult than remaining in a situation which is not maturing to the whole woman." And I just think that is so beautiful, because it's really easy for us to get stuck, and I think that's one of the blessings that coaches can help us realize and be able to grow and expand into. So, Mary, I always ask everybody before we get started if they can give us a little personal background. I know you have been touched by dementia. Do you mind sharing just a little bit about your husband's situation and where you guys are at with that?
Well, right now, Lori, we are working through it, and what I mean by that is my husband is pretty high-level functioning in time. He was diagnosed about 4 years ago as having frontal lobe dementia. And frontal lobe dementia is one of those that affects the judgment, and decision making. And so it's one of those things that you have to kind of stay on top of things to make sure he's safe and that things goes along the way that you have them planned. And it has been awesome for me to have had the previous experience that I've had, because I can keep things on track with him, and also I am aware of the resources that are available to help me as I'm working through this process.
Wonderful. So you actually got involved with dementia prior to your husband's diagnosis then?
I most certainly did, and I had no clue at all that it was going to be anything that I was going to need. And I'm also recognizing as I work with people, I am learning that many of them are finding themselves in the very same position that I'm in. They had no knowledge of what was going on, and they found themselves thrust into becoming a caregiver, which affected them because they had not planned it and didn't really know what to do.
Okay, and I think thrust is a good word, because it's not a slow process. It's like, boom, you're there,
yes.
once that diagnosis hits. Can you tell us just a little bit, because a lot of people might not know what a caregiver coach is. What exactly is that role? Can you define that for us?
Oh, certainly. I'll be happy to. A caregiver coach is someone who works with the caregiver, and they're working side by side with the caregiver to help them find the necessary resources to help the caregiver keep themselves healthy, and also to help the caregiver recognize the skills that they already have that they can use in working with their loved one or the ones that they are caring for.
I love that you say the skills they already have, because I think it really is something that is so global and life encompassing, when we're caring for one another, but we get in this crisis state and we don't always look at it like that. So I'm glad to hear you use that as part of your definition. Was there anything else you wanted to add? I kind of interrupted you there. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I think oftentimes what happens with the caregiver is they begin to do things for their loved one, and it starts on a very small scale. It could be, for example, they run to the grocery store for them and they help them out that way. And then the next thing is that they might be needed to do is take them to the doctor. And then they move into preparing the medications. And so what starts out as a small thing ends up being a very large thing. And when they're doing all of these things, they don't realize that there are resources along the way that could help them. There are agencies that would be happy to take that person during the day to something like bingo, or just to help them out for a short period of time. There are agencies within the community that are happy to do those kinds of things. But if you're kind of working with the person and you don't realize you have become a caregiver, you're just in it, then you might not think about reaching out to get someone to help you.
Well, and I think that's very interesting what you said, is that there are people out there that don't realize that they are a caregiver, because everybody's definitions are different. And we had a long discussion on the Dementia Chats, our webinar series, about even just that term, because a lot of people with dementia find that term belittling, because they don't feel like they need 24-hour care and that they're still able to do a lot of things. But on the same side, a lot of people just look at themselves as a husband or a wife or a son or a daughter or a friend. And so there is a lot of resistance to that term, just like there is the word senior. And I find that fascinating in and of itself, with that. So can you tell us, Mary, a little bit about, how should caregivers, or some people refer to them as care partners or companions or carers, how should people deal with stress? Do you have some ideas there?
I do. And that is one of the things that I try to work with when I am dealing with a caregiver and try to provide things like coordinating their services and helping them to problem solve and helping them to cope with the daily challenges of which could be family dynamics and plan ahead and those kinds of things. When I'm working with them and I'm trying to empower them, the first thing that I look at is how they're managing their stress. And so many of us just allow stress to build up and because they don't know which way to turn. They don't know who to go to. And I share with them and help them to understand that they may need to delegate some of the responsibility. Sometimes there could be 2 or 3 children, but only one of them is taking the responsibility to see after their parent or their loved one. Or it could be just a spouse, and they have nobody else to help them out. But again, there's resources. There in our community, there is a lady who will actually provide respite for a couple of days. And so that means you have to let go of trying to hold on and take the total responsibility. And then if you take care of yourself, which means make sure you go to the doctor, make sure you are healthy, then you can take care of your loved one even better.
Which is really true, and I think, I've been in the thick of things with my parents, and that was the last thing I thought of was me on the list. It just never even occurred to me. And even when my dad passed away and my mom moved into a nursing home, I was so enthralled with their lives. I didn't even know what I liked to do anymore. I had really lost myself, which is not a healthy thing at all to do. But I think it's pretty common out there. Do you see a lot of that where people just lose themselves and get overwhelmed?
Yes, I do. And then there are certain populations of people who think it's not right to allow someone to help them. They think it's their job, that they have to do it themselves no matter what kind of condition they are in. And so those old myths we have to kind of get rid of, and we can get rid of those by listening. And I work with them to help them to understand there just comes a time when you need to have to ask for help.
Yeah. And there shouldn't be shame in it. I think that's one of the things that we really have to work on is removing the shame and the guilt. And I had a revelation with my parents, and this happened after my father died of brain cancer. But he after he died, I was talking with my brothers, and it was really interesting because there were times I was really upset with my brothers. What's wrong with them? Why won't they help? Why aren't they around more? Time is precious. And, I was trying to fix them for a long time and correct them. And what I learned after my dad died, we were talking one day, was I had all these precious stories about my parents, and my brothers didn't. And I felt just this horrible grief and sadness. And I felt so bad that they didn't have those things. And part of it was because, they didn't want to deal with the emotional piece of losing their parents. But I also had to take some responsibility because looking in the rearview mirror, I saw that I helped keep them away, even though I was like, come on, can you help? Can you do this? Can you do that? I was saying the words, but my actions and my past history and role in the family was one of perfectionist. And so they knew they would never meet my standards, and they knew they would never do it right. So why get into that whole hornet's nest? And so I really had to take a big look at myself after that, and I realized it very deeply, and it changed me in terms of realizing, and I kind of joke when I speak now and tell people that, no one wants to be tied to even me 24/7. I mean, we all like variety in our lives, and it's nice to be able to let your siblings or friends or other professionals come in. It allows that person to engage with more people, and that's healthy, I think. Don't you? That's a good thing.
I think it's very, very good. And I have also run into children who are in denial, and they are saying their parent is the same as they always have been. And yet I can look at them myself and know that they're not the same that they have always been. And so when you get into this big denial thing, it is very difficult to crack. You have to help them to understand the need. And then you have to kind of work with them slowly. And what I do is I opportunities. And when I hear an opportunity that I can get a foot in the door, I go for it to help them to understand. And then I have had them come back and thank me for saying or getting them on the right track rather than just letting them go and stay in denial.
Yeah, and it is. It's when those blinders are on, it's tough. It's tough to get them off people and to get them to understand. And I think it's the fear, of the unknown. And I think, part of, how this disease is publicized is through the fear. And, it's used to raise money. And I don't agree with that philosophy or that tactic. I'm much more about giving people hope and showing them there's life with dementia. I mean, I've been on this path for 30 years with my mom, and if I ran scared for that whole 30 years from it, I can't even imagine what my life would have been like. And it's really, in so many ways, been a blessing to me. I mean, it's been a profound situation for me that's changed me, I think, for the better, and on many, many levels. Many
Lori,
levels.
Lori, I agree that we have to give them hope, and that's one of the things that I work toward is helping any of the clients that I'm working with to know that there is hope. And actually, I find just living with my husband, every day is different, but every day is not a bad day. There are some fun days that takes place, and when the fun opportunity presents itself, I smile, enjoy the moment, because even for us healthy people, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. But we do know that if we work in the direction of looking for hope for the future, that it is going to inspire us and we're going to keep moving forward. And that's what I try to do with my clients, is to inspire them, help them to understand that we care about them, we love them, and that we want the very best for them as they are working through with their loved one.
Yeah, very, very true. And I think that's one of the nice things about coaching is you do have the resources. You're looking at this from a holistic peace in terms of how do you live with the disease, how do you make it good for you, and how do you make it good for the person you're caring for. How do you make it safe for both of you? And I think safety isn't something that people really think about a lot, but there's a lot of different angles to this disease, and safety is much more than just starting a fire or wandering off. I mean, safety can have to do with, in my definition anyways, in terms of your health. And so when you're talking about the stressors, and we talk about the numbers of people that are giving care to somebody that die first, then what happens to that person? So it really is critical that we are able to find balance and live with this disease in a comfortable fashion for everybody, so that it's healthy for everyone.
And that is very true. The majority of caregivers in the world right now are spouses, relatives, and friends. And there's over 30 million households who are providing some form of caregiving. And not only that, many of these people are not paid additionally. They're just taking on the responsibility on top of what they will do on a normal basis, which puts them at high risk for health problems and emotional problems.
Yeah. Definitely. Those numbers are just enormous, and I think so many people don't realize how big and powerful those things are. This disease touches way more people than people realize. It's absolutely fascinating. When I go speak, to make that point home, I'll ask a few questions about who's had a parent that's either had this disease or has it, or a sibling, or, we kind of go down this whole row. And by the end of my 6 questions, I can have, I'll just take 100 people in an audience. There might be 1 or 2 people still standing that have not personally been touched. Mm-hmm. And that it's going to hit. It's going to happen. And so it's so critical that we all get educated. And there are so many wonderful resources out there. Even that's, one of our purposes on Alzheimer's Speaks is to help kind of lift best practices and resources up so that people can find them. Can you talk about just some typical resources that are available in a community that somebody could tap into if they're dealing with dementia?
Here in Williamsburg, we have the Center for Excellence in Aging, and they provide an overview for anyone who has a need. You can just bring your loved one in, and they will do some basic assessments there. We have also several support groups that are available to help people who already know that their loved one has been diagnosed, or they're struggling with caregiving. You can also go out on the Internet if they have Internet access, and AARP has just come up with a toolbox for caregivers, and they have a doctor that is available there where you can write a question and send it to him, and he will respond back to you. So there are various organizations that are tapping into the needs of what a person might have. We have also Faith in Action. And Faith in Action will provide transportation and a lot of other activities for family members who are in need. And at our church, there is a respite care, and that respite care will provide 4 to 5 hours of assistance to just help people out when they get to the point that they can, just need a break, just need to get away. And not to mention, we have a lady here who her ministry is doing nothing but taking care of the loved ones so that the caregiver can have a respite. And what she does is she will keep them 24/7. And she is a nurse trained. Her husband works with her. She has a hospital bed and everything available, and she will provide their medication and everything as long as you leave instructions as to who their primary doctors are, the hospitals, and where, if in case an emergency, comes up. That's just a few of them, but there are many, and I'm just thankful that there are many here.
Yeah, Linda had just noted in the chat box that what scares her the most is that she'll die before her husband, and so I asked her if she had any support, and she said yes, her daughter is finally coming around and seeing that she needs help. I don't know where you're located, Linda, but there is a place down in Atlanta that I just found out about called Caring Together, and they provide respite care, and it is so critical for people to maybe tap into, depending on, the stage and where your husband is at, but there's adult daycare programs where they can go during the day, get socialization, get fed, be watched over very well, and just gives you a chance to breathe. Go get your hair done, go take a walk, do the laundry, but just be able to feel like you can do something on your own. Linda's noting here, he's in a nursing home, and I thought it would make it easier on me, but it's still a lot of stress, and that transition is tough. Definitely. How long has he been in the nursing home, Linda? And we'll see if maybe we've got some advice from Mary for you as well on transitioning care, because that is hard to turn it over. I remember when my mom went in, I was there all the time. I didn't have a lot of trust, and I think that's part of the letting go process. What do you think, Mary, about that transition? Do you think trust comes into play?
I think trust is very important, but I also think she's hanging on to the stress. She's not letting it go, and it probably is because she doesn't trust that they can do what she can do. And she might be feeling a little bit of lack of control right now. She might need to see, she could work with a caregiver coach to help her to pick up her own strengths now and to refocus back on herself, where she's probably given up focus on herself and been dealing with her husband. I wonder how she's sleeping, and how her appetite is, because that is definitely one of the symptoms of caregiver stress.
Oh, yeah. I see that totally. And, you lose those sleep patterns.
Right.
And, we think we're calming ourselves down. It's tough. I learned to do meditation and breathing. Just taking those deep breaths were amazing, the difference it made for me. And one of the things I learned was even in breathing was when I inhaled, I asked, and you can ask your God to give you whatever it is you need in that moment. And then on the exhale, I released everything my body no longer needed. And I would do that 10 or 12 times. And amazing the difference it makes in terms of calming the body down, just those really deep breaths and that thoughts of give me what I need in this time to make me strong and clear and comfortable, and then release my worries over to you. Linda is saying that's good.
One of the that is one of the things that I do with my clients, too, is to help them learn how to meditate, help them to learn how to relax their bodies, and how to change the focus from what they're focusing on, because certain focuses causes stress. And then we can go to a more relaxing or beautiful focus and calm our body down. So certainly that is the direction that I would certainly want to be moving with her.
Yeah, and I think that that's really, really common. It's, you know, when you're sleep deprived, you can't think straight. I mean, everything is just off in your body. And I think, you know, when you asked about how are you eating is important, too, because a lot of times we don't eat properly and we're feeding our bodies the wrong fuel. I mean, I was the queen of the drive-thrus because I was just running. I didn't cook, you know, or pizzas. And that's just horrible for you, you know, on a constant. And granted, they've gotten better in terms of options, but would I pick those? You know, probably not. And you know, it just, or going for a walk. You know, yesterday I was feeling kind of stressed, and I just and I'm, you know, my mom's been in the nursing home now for 12 months, and my stress really didn't have so much to do with her, but I just thought, I just need to take a break. I just need to just breathe and not think about anything and just take in the beauty around me and be appreciative, because I think sometimes when we get an overload, I know for myself, I think I lost my appreciation of things at times.
Right.
And again, I think that's not a good thing to do too. So to find a way to find the joy again in life is really important.
I walk every morning for 3 miles, and I don't even have a dog, but I walk my neighbor's dog, who is a fast walker. And I enjoy the beauty of nature as I'm walking, and I hear the birds chirping, and the quietness of the morning is very different from the quietness of the day. And so that is just so relaxing for me, and it helps me to get started for my day, and I'm more relaxed. And that might be something that she wants to take a look at.
Okay. I've got somebody who just, or Linda had said, I wish you were here in Texas. Now, with a caregiver coach, I mean, you can do that remotely, too.
Absolutely.
A lot of people do telephone and Skype and email support, so there's all different ways. So you don't have to, if you're looking for a coach, you don't have to have somebody in your area. I mean, there's people, you know, on the other side of the world that are communicating today, which is real important there. Carol is writing, she just got into the show about breathing in and out. I think she disagrees with my mode. She says the more powerful technique is in with the bad and out with the good. In with all the, I don't know if I'm reading that right or not. In with all the bad stress. I'll have to read this a little bit more. I don't know. You become transformer.
While you are reading that, that's the good thing about a caregiver coach. You can coach over the phone, and I have done coaching through Skype, and the furthest away I have had clients is England. And so it makes it really nice, and all you need to do, I have my website there, is to go on the website, and you can send me a message, and I will respond to that message, and I will let you know what would work for the both of us, and we can get together just as there is a need. Okay.
She had put in here that it's Toggling is the type of meditation practice, and I'll I'll kind of look that up and see. I don't know. I was always taught to blow out the bad and breathe in the good. But, there's always more than one way to do it. And the thing is, you have to figure out what works for you. So if the other way works for Carol, that's great. I always recommend people try everything. What do you have to lose? Check it out and see what resonates, with you on any type of parallel there. I want to talk a little bit about what would one need to connect to a support group. What kind of information are people looking for? I know the word support group sometimes just scares people as a whole, and it makes them a little bit nervous as to what are the expectations, of the group, and what are they going to be asked for, and what are they going to be asked of. Can you give us some ideas on that?
Well, there are various kinds of support groups, and a person may go to a support group and don't feel comfortable there. And then they may go to another support group and feel comfortable. So it is my recommendation for them to try to find out, and usually you can find out through your churches or your senior centers where certain support groups are. And then she can find out what type of support group, because there can be anger management. They could be caregiver support group. They could be pain management support group. There's so many different kinds of groups. So if they go and they're not comfortable, then I recommend that they find another support group. And not only that, the facilitators of the group, sometimes you might not feel comfortable with the facilitators. And if you're not comfortable with that, that's going to cause you more stress. And I recommend you finding some place that you are comfortable with in order to follow through. If you have the Internet, you can go on the Internet and you can look for support groups by putting in your zip code and just say support groups, and a list will come up. We have in our area a health magazine that you can go to any medical facility and pick it up. If you look in the back of that health magazine, it is going to list all the different types of support groups that are available in our area. And then you can go to, whichever one you feel is going to meet your needs.
Okay, great. I did put in that link. I just want to note that Carol had mentioned in the chat box, and I'm also going to drop in the company that I mentioned that does the respite in Atlanta, if anyone is interested in that. So I think that's great. You had told us that there are a variety of support groups. And, there's also the memory cafes and the Alzheimer's cafes, which are not just for the person with that is carrying. And I'm going to sneeze here, so I'm going to try not to, but I usually do 3 in a row, so we'll see what happens. Maybe I can get rid of my sneeze. But those are wonderful resources for people who are in early stages and their care partners. And some of those are a very social model. Some of them are programmatic and social. Some of them spend the full 2 hours together or whatever the session is. Others split them apart and have group time. So it just all depends, on that, what you're looking for. But again, check those out. And the other thing I'd like to just put a pitch in here for, on AlzheimerSpeaks.com, we do have a resource directory, and I built that to be a collaborative resource directory so that people can put in information and refer others to services, tools, and products that they feel are good and helpful, and there's no fee to do that. So if you go to alzheimerspeaks.com, all you have to do is in the header, there is a box that says Partnering Options, Share That You Care. And if you click on that, it'll give you all the breakdowns, but it's from businesses to books and videos and newsletters and blogs, but anything that is specific to dementia and dementia caregiving, I would see as appropriate to go ahead and put in there. The goal is to put the URL and direct people directly to whatever it is you're talking about. So if it's a book and it's a couple clicks in on the site, you go in and give them that URL, because wouldn't you agree, Mary, that caregivers just don't have the time to do the search and destroy? Part of, I think, what you most likely bring to the table is to help them streamline things and to get organized. And to look at things in a different light along with all of your supports. Is that correct?
That is very correct. And oftentimes caregivers need as much education as possible so that if you're comfortable with what you know, then you can feel more comfortable with what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Do you? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say sometimes we find that there are workshops and different kinds of venues that are put on by our local hospital, and they're usually free, and it usually only takes about an hour or so if you register to attend them, and they can be very beneficial because, again, they will be given resources and other things that you might be able to tap into within the community. Okay.
Can you give us some strategies to deal with a person who is experiencing memory loss and is in denial? That's a big issue, I think, for people.
That is a very big issue, and a lot of times it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of, the one thing that doesn't seem to work is correcting them. Because in their mind, what they are saying and feeling is what they feel at the moment in time. So you have to listen to them, and if it's something that needs to change, you might want to wait a little while before you come back and say that to them. And if you say it to them later, they might not remember that they had said it in a different way earlier. So it takes a lot of patience. You have to learn to listen carefully and reflecting back, not immediately necessarily, but a little later down the line works a lot better than trying to correct them immediately when something is happening.
Okay. And well, and one of the things that I learned was that you can't change their mind. I mean, because a lot of times there's just not that rationale that we see it and it's real clear to us, and we kind of go, well, why don't they see it? Because they can't. Is kind of the simple answer, just because they can't. And sometimes we take things real personally. And if there's one thing I try to, tell people is that, they're not doing anything to try to attack you personally. It's just the way they're seeing the world, and we have to, we have to look at those things a little bit differently in terms of how we are judging things.
We have to know that our loved one is not that person that they were before they started down this road of dementia. We love them, and they will always be our spouse or our mother or whatever, but their thought processes are changing not because they want them to change, but because there's something in the brain that's causing the change. And so we have to show loving and acceptance for who they are, where they are, in the space that they are.
Mm-hmm. Very important, very important. One of the tools that I developed on my, with my mom's journey is just called Your Memory Chip, which gets people to shift from being task-oriented to being person-centered. Because what I found when I talked with caregivers and myself, every time I asked them what did they have to do, everyone was focused on tasks. And with each task, there was kind of a twang in the voice that they didn't really want to do that. So I teach people to focus on three things. Are they safe? Are they happy? Are they pain-free? And have that come before the task. And that helped me be more person-centered. It helped me not get emotional about a reaction to something. It helped me let go of things that I was trying to still implement or change that really weren't important. And when I focused on are they safe, are they happy, are they pain-free, it allowed me to let go and not be so driven by those tasks. Do you see others really driven by task?
Absolutely. And I also see them being driven by, they wouldn't do that or whatever. And it's causing more stress for the loved one and them, rather than if they did focus on the safety, the happy, and being pain-free. And I think that is so important for them to be safe under whatever conditions they're under, and that they're happy doing what they do. My husband is a trumpet player, and he loves to play the trumpet. And he continues to play the trumpet 2 or 3 times a day, so I let him enjoy that. And he never complains of being in pain. So basically, overall, as I said, he's pretty high functioning now. We don't know what turns that can take place, but we want to, continue it with the safety and to keep him happy and keep him moving down the road that we're going in.
Very true. Linda was just noting that one thing that's really hard for her is her husband hasn't talked in almost 2 years. And so she doesn't know what he's thinking or saying. And Carol has made a comment that you have to learn to read their eyes and look at all the signals. And I agree with that. You have to really turn into an investigator and look for those nonverbals. And I also want to add, don't give up on hope that they won't talk you again, because this is a very bizarre disease. My mom, now she'll say a word here or there, but she can't say a sentence. But she hadn't said my name, and some of you have probably heard this story before, but I'm going to share it because I don't think Linda and Carol have. She hadn't said my name in like 3 years. And one day when I walked into the nursing home, she was laying in her bed. This is kind of a cute story, so I'll say the whole thing. She was laying in her bed with her pants pulled down to her crotch and her shirt tucked underneath her boobs, and the sun was coming in, and she was just like laying like she was sunbathing, through this picture window in her room. And she had a roommate, so the curtain was drawn, and as I walked into the room, I could see her shadow, and I knew that she was sleeping or laying down. And when I turn and I see my mom, and my mom's a big gal. She's short, but she's big. Her big belly is hanging out, and she's like basking in the sun with this huge smile on her face, like a cat,
Yeah.
And I started giggling, and I said, "Oh, Mom, do I need to pull out that bikini for you?" And out of a dead sleep, this woman who hadn't said my name in 3 years said, "Oh, Lori, I don't think I should be wearing a bikini." And then she went back to sleep again. And I just sat on her bed, and I bawled, and I rubbed her tummy, I bet for 2 hours, because I didn't think that I would ever hear those words out of my mom's mouth. And that was such a gift to me that day.
Oh, yes. What a gift.
And there's been so many little things like that have happened. And, you know, I just believe that sometimes they just can't muster it up. And I know that there's things going on in the brain that people will argue that they physically can't do it anymore. But I do believe in miracles, and I do believe in those moments that they will just come up and grab you with a big hug, even though they can't physically do it anymore, in some other fashion. And you're just going to feel this warmth and closeness that you can't even put into words, but you will never, ever forget. So like Carol said, watch for those eyes, listen for the giggles, look for the hand and the feet movement. All of those are little signs that we forget about, and they're so beautiful and so powerful. And I think, and I'll ask Mary this, but I think they make us much more in the moment when you're focusing on those things. You're just much more connected. I believe, anyways, in my situation, that my mom has taught me to love on several levels of unconditional love I didn't even know existed, you know, through this process. She's raised me in terms of my ability to love and be compassionate, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Well, I can't believe that we are down to like 4 minutes before we pull in our next guest here. I knew the time would fly with you today, Mary. And it really has. We've got a couple other comments, so let me just see. Linda is saying, I know he would never have done that before Alzheimer's. Oops, I must have missed something there. Let's see. Carol's just saying that one of her shortcuts is to pretend, that I pretend like I'm looking into the eyes of a puppy. So they're just kind of having a private conversation here, which is fine. I love it when people get engaged and share what is working, because we never know what's going to work. And so to me, and I believe Mary believes the same, is we need to build this this toolbox of different resources, because different things work at different times, because not only do they change, but we change. And our moods and things affect things. So what would be in your wrap-up, Mary, what would be your advice for caregivers and companions out there that are dealing with dementia?
I just need them to know that caregiving for a loved one can be a very rewarding experience. If they just don't look at it as negative, look at it as positive. We all are learning, we're growing, and so each day look at the love that the person is offering them, and look at the love that you're offering them back. And just remember that loving and caring for each one has so much meaning. And we're writing our history as we go along. That person is also writing it, even though it might not be verbally. It can be nonverbal.
Yeah.
And I can be reached through my website. It has been wonderful, Lori, having this opportunity to talk with you and sharing with those that are out listening to us.
Well, great. And your website is www.brettcoaching, and that's BRETT, and then coaching.com. And get a hold of Mary. Like I said, she can help you no matter where you are in the world. It's very easy to have these conversations in different forms. So talking on the phone, doing email, I don't know if you do Skype or not, or
I
Google
do.
Hangouts. Okay. People are
Skype.
doing so many different things. So a lot of people are starting to just do Facebook or FaceTime now on their phones and stuff. So, I mean, there's so many different ways to be able to interact. So don't cut yourself short by thinking that you have to stay in your own neighborhood. And Carol's asking, are the programs archived? Yes, all the programs here are archived, so you can find any of them at any time, 24/7. Well, Mary, it has just been a divine pleasure to have you with us today. Have really enjoyed the conversation and hope to have you back in the future if you're interested.
Oh, I'd love to.
Okay. Well, you have a great day then, and we will talk soon. Okay?
Okay. Bye-bye
Okay,
now.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
Before I pull in our next guest, I want to just give some updates and information. Our last radio show was on inflammation and dementia, and we talked a lot about, what you can eat and some supplements to help with dementia and inflammation, because there is a link there, and there might be some help for you. So that might be an interesting conversation. Our next radio show is going to be on July 2nd, and that one's going to be very interesting as well. I'm going to have the Blondes versus Burnett's on, which is a powder puff football group, and there's several of them in our country that are young women raising funds for the disease. And then the second half of the show is going to be a man that has developed heartbeat lullabies, which sounds a little strange, but it's absolutely fascinating, and I've actually listened to them and slept like a baby. So these can really help anybody, somebody with dementia or a caregiver. I remember having puppies, and they would say, put a clock under their mat, because they're used to the mom's heartbeat. So this is a real interesting conversation that's research-based to boot. Also on our website, you can find the last dementia chats, or any of them. They're all archived there. We talked about the purple angel symbol to raise awareness, and we talked about the government in dementia, and we also talked about the words we use: caregiver, care partner, carer, and what do people with dementia think about those words? Because Dementia Chats is all about their voice. They are the experts that I interview. And our next Dementia Chats will be on December. I'm jumping the gun. June 25th. I also wanted to highlight on the blog, there were a few articles that generated some conversation there. Radio station versus therapeutic music was a real interesting article. And then tips to coping with loved ones who have Alzheimer's. It was also another one. And then you can always get to the Dementia Chats there, or you can find them on Facebook as well, or also on the main website. And then I want to mention, I'm really excited about this. James Cerisi is a man who developed Jiminy Wicket, which is a croquet game for people with dementia. And he started this because his dad had dementia. And he found that he couldn't communicate, but when they played croquet, there were just these smiles that grew. And so he actually flew into town the other day and got our memory cafe set up, and we're going to play this Friday on the longest day of the year and the summer solstice. We're going to go ahead and get together and have a fun game of croquet. under his auspice of Jiminy Wicket, which is really user-friendly. We can do it with wheelchairs. We can really do it with just about anybody. So if you're interested in information on that, he is on YouTube, or you can go to www.jiminywicket.com, and that's JIMINY, Wicket, WICKET.com, and get more information on that. So let's get started with our second half of the show. Sue Paul is our next guest, and I'm, again, very excited to have her. She is known as the Dementia Queen. She has been an occupational therapist for over 20 years, and she specializes in rehabilitation and habilitation of people with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. She is part owner and Chief Operating Officer of the Baker Rehab Group in Maryland, and she's active in the Alzheimer's Association both as a speaker and an advocate. She has a blog called The Dementia Queen, where she provides tips and strategies for caregivers who want to maximize the function of those with the disease. So with no further ado, welcome, Sue. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Lori. Thanks for having me.
Well, good. I'm thrilled to be here. You have to tell people how you got deemed the Queen of Dementia, or the Dementia Queen, I should say.
Well, I guess it's because I was interested in this from the therapy perspective long before anybody else. Because historically, therapists didn't have to deal with anybody that had a diagnosis of dementia. But so anyway, I became very interested in what I'd like to make a difference for these people, and I've really applied myself to learning as much as I could. So as a joke, they kind of said, "Well, you're the queen of this. Why don't you handle this patient or something?" So the Dementia Queen just stuck.
Oh, too funny. Now, have you been personally touched in your own family or circle of friends by dementia?
Yeah, my grandmother probably had Alzheimer's disease, but we just didn't call it that. She was getting old and forgetful and a little difficult at times and a little self-centered, and nobody called it what it was. Looking back now, I certainly think she had Alzheimer's disease, but we just kind of didn't call it that. So.
Yeah, I had a great aunt, and they just said she was going senile. I mean, that's what they deemed it back then, and that was when I was 13, and I was so crushed the day she didn't know who I was anymore, and nobody could give me an answer. And I just remember this deep pain of thinking, I don't ever want anyone to feel that pain. And little did I know, I would be doing what I'm doing, now, 40 years later, in terms of trying to give people hope and teach them how to connect in different ways, and talking with experts all around the world to help give insight. Can you tell us, Sue, what exactly is an occupational therapist? Because not everybody knows, and so we might as well start from ground one so that we've got a good base for our conversation here today.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know what occupational therapists do. We're trained to deal in function. It's very similar to physical therapy in that you have to have physical abilities to do a lot of functional things. So we learn a lot of the same things that a physical therapist would learn, but our goals are different. Our goals are really ultimately, can you get across the room and open the refrigerator and get a drink out and carry it across the room, and can you open the bottle? And, it's much more detail and function-based than physical therapy. But a lot of our strategies and approaches we use are similar. Like, you have to have the ability to walk, and you have to have the strength to get up and down, and the strength in your hands to open a bottle. We also focus a lot on cognition, which is something physical therapy doesn't do. So we're trained to test the different kind of cognitive systems like memory and sequencing and insight and judgment and problem solving. So it's a very holistic profession. We deal with all kinds of patients from pediatric up to geriatric and every kind of disease or injury that could come along that impairs your function. So it's funny that, I didn't know I was going to be an occupational therapist either. I thought I'd be a physical therapist and a sports medicine kind of person, and I found that I really like the function. I like having a reason to do what I do and see the outcomes in terms of, improving somebody's quality of life and their independence. So that's basically what OTs do.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I think that people do get them mixed up so often, and one of the things that I love that you guys do is breaking down these tasks, because we'll just say, go get the ketchup out of the refrigerator, and we think it's one step, but it's not.
Right.
It's not.
Right. There's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah,
that's right.
Or make a piece of toast, and we realize, you guys really help us realize how detailed things are and how we've just categorized them in a lump. And I think that's very interesting. Can you give us an example of a task that we say and then break it down into steps so that people can kind of see that? What it takes to make a piece of toast. Can we use that as an example?
Sure. Well, you have to, the planning into making toast starts, before you even have the supplies. You have to know what you need in order to make toast. You need to be able to plan the steps ahead of time. So I'm going to walk across the room and I'm going to get out the bread. I'm going to open the bread and take off the little twisty tie that's on the bread package, and then you have to open the toaster and put it in the toaster and turn the toaster on. If you're going to put anything on your toast, you're across the room again, planning exactly what it is you're going to be getting out of the refrigerator, looking for the butter and searching high and low and behind things and in drawers, looking for things. Takes a lot of visual attention. It takes a lot of high-level cognitive processes to execute something you're planning. Then you need to get the knife, and then you need to have the dexterity and the coordination to spread butter onto the toast, without smashing it or without breaking it, and turning off the oven if it was something that was could be left on. There's so many things that go into it, and you have to maintain your balance this whole time and not fall while you're doing this, and be able to shift your attention to something else and rely on this subconscious cognitive process to hold your balance up, and while you're doing that, you're thinking of what you're going to be drinking when you have your toast, and what show is on that you want to get back to seeing. And gosh, you need to remember to call your daughter because she called, and you have so many things going through your mind, and it's not just about the toast, but then again you need to be able to pay attention to what you're doing. Yeah. So it's very detailed.
Now, Linda had asked a question, will Medicare or Medicaid pay for occupational therapy?
Yes, there needs to be a medical reason, a medical need. But, yeah, there's a variety of settings, too. It could be in an outpatient setting or in the home. And actually, our company does outpatient in the home, which is also another harder to find service, but it is available in some areas. But, yeah, Medicare Part A and B will pay for occupational therapy. Lots of private insurances do. Medicaid does. I'm not as familiar with what the requirements are, but I know that they do in some situations. So, yes, Linda, it does.
Okay, great. Now, can you, for people with Alzheimer's disease, can you tell us, what are some of the benefits for them to go and have rehab services, like physical or occupational therapy versus not, I guess?
Well, Lori, if I could back up, 20 years ago, that wasn't our problem. If somebody with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia broke their hip or had a stroke or broken wrist, they were considered not rehabable because they couldn't follow instructions. So unless you were a conventional, traditional patient who could respond to commands and execute the plan, you weren't considered a rehab candidate. So about 10 years ago, the philosophy started changing on that, which is about the time I became the dementia queen, because these people need rehab services. And just because they can't follow the weight-bearing precautions because they had a hip replacement and they're not allowed to put full weight on it, and they've never used a walker before, I mean, that's up to me. I have to figure that out. It's not the patient's fault that they're not able to follow my conventional approaches. I'm the one who needs to figure that out. So patients definitely benefit from all the therapy services needed for all the regular reasons that people need therapy, but also, this whole the dementia component, it's a disease. Alzheimer's is a disease. So I think it should be rehabbed just like any other disease would be.
Yep. Okay. And to me that makes a ton of sense. Can you talk about what type of role like an occupational therapy would play with somebody, and how often would they be seen, and what's the length of time of a visit and things like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just going to vary. Unfortunately, there's no standardized system, or there's no standardized level of care even for somebody with Alzheimer's. Generally, when I see somebody with dementia, and I do a lot of home health, that's mostly my setting I'm in. But there's a whole variety of issues going on. It's not just about their Alzheimer's. It's about their home not being set up safely, and and their balance isn't good, and maybe they're not using their arms as well. Their strength isn't good, and their fine motor coordination isn't good. There's a variety of things that could be going on with somebody who just has normal aging going on, in addition to dementia. So, it can vary as far as whatever you find. I think most people get about a 30 to 60-minute visit in the home, anywhere from, I'd say, 5 visits up to, 2 or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
It just really depends on you need to be able to justify why you're there, and you need to be able to show progress and things that you're working on. And I think part of why I'm becoming so vocal about therapy in this dementia community is because there, like I said, there is no standard of care, and it really needs to be emphasized to the payers that these things take longer for this population. Repetition is how these people learn. So,
mm-hmm.
we're writing it. We're writing the procedures as we go. We just need to get the ear of the right lawmakers and the people who handle the money to understand why it takes longer with somebody with dementia.
Yeah,
does that answer your question?
Definitely. Yeah. Now, Linda's also asking a question. She said, like with somebody who's leaning to one side and stumbling with walking, is that something that you could help with, or would that be more of a physical therapist versus occupational therapist, or?
It takes a village. I think it's good to have the whole team involved.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly physical therapy domain. Occupational therapists have to deal with that too, though, because if I'm trying to teach somebody to get in and out of the bathroom and they're leaning and stumbling, I need to address the leaning and stumbling. So,
mm-hmm.
yes, physical therapists are excellent at that, and occupational therapists can definitely assist with it. If this was my patient, I would certainly call in physical therapy to help me, because the more
mm-hmm.
the better. They certainly qualify for it. So, yes,
mm-hmm.
I would say let's get PT involved as well.
Okay, and I think that makes sense, and I like your attitude of it takes a village and all working together, because the more resources, the better we can do with that. What are some of the challenges that you see when people with Alzheimer's or dementia are alone?
Oh, gosh. I think we've all seen this to some degree. One of their biggest problems is access to care, because, whether or not they're driving is a whole another ball of wax. But, access to the doctor, knowing the questions to ask, being able to be their own advocate, those are more higher-level functioning patients. But they tend to isolate themselves and get more withdrawn and more difficult for families to get a hold of as well, and resistant to care. There's pride and dignity at stake here, that they're not willing to give up control of their lives to somebody else. There's a lack of insight with the disease, that they might not recognize that something's actually wrong. So, it would be kind of it's understandable that they would get defensive if, somebody's trying to change the way they do things or insist they do things another way. So these people tend to, it's hard to get in there with them. It's hard to build trust and to kind of change up things on them when they like things just the way they are. So that's just a few of the challenges. I mean, I could go on and on because there's a lot.
Yeah, there definitely are a lot. And with our audience, if anybody wants to call in, feel free to do so at 714-364-4757. Again, that's 714-364-4757. Or you can continue to use the chat box with any questions or comments that you have, because again, we like the conversation to grow and kind of roll, with where things are at, because you guys come up with some beautiful things, beautiful comments. What are some challenges that you see as an occupational therapist in terms of dealing with somebody with dementia? Not because it's not, I would imagine you're not just dealing with them, but you are dealing with their care partner as well in terms of giving instructions and things like that. I would think that it would be a little bit more complicated than your average bear out there, where you're just giving them, these are your exercises, and the person is going to go home and do them. Or am I wrong on that?
Oh no, you're right on. Without the caregiver's involvement, it's really, really difficult to have any sort of effect with any therapy approaches you're going to try to implement. You have to have people on board, because a lot of times you're just not going to get investment from the patient, because they don't, you talked with Mary earlier about, they don't have the insight to recognize what's going on. They don't know that they're not the best person to make that judgment. So you need to get the family members involved. What's difficult is when everybody's in the same room, and you don't want to try to take power away from the patient. You don't want to force your reality on theirs. That's one thing you guys were talking about as far as trying to correct them when they're wrong about something. But that's really not the point. You're trying to bend to whatever their reality is. So it's you have to have, unfortunately, some conversations over the phone when they're not in the room that can be more honest. It's a delicate situation. You're just trying to build trust with. Yeah, you're trying to build trust with all the players, and ultimately the patient needs to know that I'm there just to help them. I'm not there to undermine them or to change something that isn't broken. I'm just only trying to improve things. That's it. And if I can get them to believe me that that's really my only intention here, then they'll let me be a little more open about what I see. And we do some cognitive testing that show some objective data, and I can show them the score, and without embarrassing them or pointing out, or criticizing, it's like, you can see that you do have a little bit of memory loss, and can you see that in your own life? And they might say, oh yeah, or sometimes, no, I don't see any problem with my memory. Sometimes you get that too. But you just try to you build a case, and if they're willing to accept it, then that's great. It's a little bit easier. But if they're not, then you don't fight that. You just have to engage the caregiver in the reality of the situation and offer your suggestions through them, and and maybe try to come at it as a team. This is what we think we should do, and it's not easy. It's a very delicate process. Not 100% successful.
Well, and do you find that, because I can see where this might be frustrating for, care partners and companions, getting the instructions of, it's just one more thing now I have to deal with, if there's, one more appointment or one more exercise. So do you see that level of frustration and kind of angst in people sometimes?
Absolutely. And part of my teaching is I don't try to upset the apple cart and let's do everything differently, because it's just too overwhelming. And the game changes every day. The rules change every day. What worked yesterday doesn't work today. So, it's what I think we're best on doing is focusing on abilities and things that they can do well. because they get joy out of that and satisfaction out of that, and there's some potential that they'll be able to do these functional tasks long into the disease. So those are the things that they're successful with are the things I focus on. And the caregiver appreciates that too. So I try to separate strengths from weaknesses. So these are the things that, Mom is still able to get her own shirt on. So let's let her do that every day. Just let her put her own, you get the range of motion. She gets fine motor with buttoning the shirt. And she can keep that skill long into the disease. Whereas if you start helping too soon, you take away that function too soon. But her pants are difficult, and she struggles. Her back hurts and her knees hurt. And so go ahead and help her with that. And don't make that part of the whole routine. Just help her with that. So by splitting up the amount of care into what we're going to let them do and what you're going to help with, I think that helps give the caregiver a clearer idea of, okay, I'm going to help this much. That's not too much or too little. I'm just going to help this much. It's a little more clear guidance on how they can be useful, maximize their help.
Sure, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Someone is asking, how would you work with someone who doesn't want to take a shower? Do you have any hints on that?
Yeah, that is very, 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 very common and very difficult to negotiate that, because it's not a conversation you're going to win. It's really, it needs to be their idea for the most part, and it needs to be maybe rewarded or bargained for. You can set boundaries as far as, you don't want to offer an open-ended question like, what day this week do you want to take your shower, or what time today do you want to take your shower? It's too open-ended. If you give them a choice of two, do you want to take your shower at 11 o'clock or do you want to take it at 2 o'clock? And they have to pick one. You're kind of narrowing the choices a little bit. That might help. Frequently, am I talking too quick, Lori?
No, you're
very,
fine.
Very passionate. A lot of times, it's a comfort thing as far as, being naked and cold is not pleasant for a lot of people, and the thought of undressing. And so you want to make the room as warm as possible. Keep them draped until they're actually in the shower. So a towel or a sheet or something to cover them a little more so they don't feel quite so exposed. That might give you a little more success as well. Having a reward afterwards, like, let's get your shower because then we're going to go see so-and-so, or somebody's coming for a visit, or let's have some cake, something, some kind of reward might help a little bit too. And then I think, especially in aggregate settings where you in assisted living or nursing home, there's usually one caregiver who's more successful than others. Sometimes it's a son or daughter. Sometimes it's not. I think finding the person who they're most agreeable to do that with and sticking with that plan helps also, because there's usually one person who can convince them that it's time to take a shower.
Well, and do you find, because I know a lot of times I'll hear, maybe they grew up not taking a shower every day, and we're still trying to push that as their routine. Maybe they only took one every once a week or once every 2 weeks, or maybe it's time to change to sponge baths because of the discomfort. And, to me it gets back to that, are they safe, are they happy, are they pain-free? For my mom, I'll throw this in, she used to love the water, absolutely loved it. And she would say the shower hurt her. And I didn't understand that. And Teepa Snow, who's one of the most fabulous trainers out there, I pulled her aside and I'm like, what is up with this? And she said, well, as we age, we lose our fat pads. And I said, well, my mom's a real heavy lady. And she says it has nothing to do with someone being heavy or not. She says we lose our fat pads as we age that cover our nerves. And so sometimes a regular shower head with forceful water can actually hurt their body. And so I immediately went right back to the nursing home, grabbed the administrator and said, I want to make a donation, and I want you to change all your shower heads to rain shower heads. And that really helped her, and it helped a lot of others as well. And so sometimes it can be goofy stuff that we just don't know that can make a big difference. Or having a handheld versus, one in the wall, because then you can control when they're getting wet. or using, the seat instead of standing, and there's lots of different things, or the length of time, and but I think you're right on about keeping them warm, because they do get chilly, and keeping them covered and being respectful with that is really important. If you've got the ability, and not everyone does, but to even have heated floors in a bathroom. I would love to see all communities have heated floors and heated towel bars. I think that would reduce things a lot. But what do I know? That's just
right.
me.
And I think it's you got to pick your battles too, because like you said, showering isn't the only way to take a bath. And unfortunately there are, and I was speaking just typically from a behavioral standpoint when they don't want to shower. But there is a sense of safety when you equip the bathroom well. Like you said, you have a seat, and you can make it safer and a better experience, but it doesn't have to be a shower, Yeah. And unfortunately, later in the disease, they do sometimes get more cooperative once the personality difficulties have kind of passed, and you have somebody who's not making their own decisions as much. That there's less resistance sometimes. So, you can kind of pick your battles. I'm not sure showering is worth a lot of the anxiety it causes a lot of caregivers sometimes, just because it was their habit at one time to shower regularly, and they, they just paid a lot of attention to their appearance before, like you said, are they happy, are they safe, are they pain-free, that really is what it comes down to, so. I agree with you very much on that point.
Yeah. Linda's saying her husband's having more accidents, in his clothes. And that
they need to be clean. Yeah.
Definitely need to be clean. But I think part of it is, what they're using for product line and stuff too, and how often are they checked. Because if you're checked and clean, just like with a baby, you can go in there and wash them down and make sure that the skin's not breaking, because you don't want to have, any infections and things that way. But you can mandate that they check him, every 2 hours and have him changed if he has an incontinence problem, or what type of products are they using? Are they using a Depends, or, there's wherever out there, there's lots of different types of products as well. But I would bring that up in the care conference and say, I really have concerns, with this. What can we do? The other thing we did in my mom's nursing home, when I went in to do the shower heads, Doug said, he was the administrator. He says, your timing is so good, Lori. He's like, you'll never know what's on my desk right now. And I said, what? And he said, we're going to redo the bathrooms. What else would you like to see? And I said, I'd like to see aromatherapy used in there. I'd like to see music pumped in there. I'd like to see different colors, because they had like the canary yellow thing going on. And they just made a ton of changes, and it really looks very beautiful now, and the atmosphere is so different. And so they incorporated a lot of things in, and they said the music has really helped, but of course it has to be music of their, the patient's genre.
Generation, yes.
Yeah, and again, you still have to know, if that, because certain songs can trigger different emotions, so you have to know that before you get in there. Linda had mentioned there's also heated shower chairs, which is also another great route with that. So good questions. Keep them coming. There's.
And Linda, about the diaper situation too. This is just a suggestion that's worked for me before. Sometimes those, the pull-up type of undergarment, it can be, it's off with the shoes, off with the socks, off with the pants, on with the new pull-up. You have to disrobe to get a pull-up back on again. But sometimes if you put a pad inside the pull-up, that's a good temporary, every 2 hour, just pull the pants down far enough to change the pad out. And you don't have to change the whole pull-up garment every single time. Does that make sense?
Oh, Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
And you get better compliance because it's not such an ordeal, and it's quicker. You can, they're not sitting in a fully saturated Depends, for a long time.
Yep.
So maybe try that. There's little, for men, it's those, well, I think for women too, there's these little poise pads that fit inside a pull-up, so you get double layer.
There's a company I just ran across called Wherever. In fact, I'm going to have them on the radio show to talk about this. And they have, some really nice-looking underwear, that is washable. So you don't have to, you don't have to be buying the Depends. It's not big and bulky all over, just in the areas you need it. And, they have different types depending on, the severity of the incontinence. And I just found it really very interesting because, all I knew for the most part was the Depends. Depends is kind of like Kleenex. Everybody calls a tissue a Kleenex.
Exactly, yeah.
And you just kind of visualize that. And so I do think that that's an important thing because, just keeping people comfortable. And is huge because that can trigger a lot of other things there. So good. Can you tell us, Sue, what is the focus of an occupational therapist? Later on in the disease process, can you really do anything with somebody who's in later stages?
Actually, yes, you can. The big focus of therapy later on is prevention. So we're preventing falls, skin breakdown, aspiration, and contractures. Those are the big ones. And contractures are those shortened soft tissue around the joints. So their hands clench in like fists and their knees bend, and it's hard to straighten their knees out. So at the end stages of the disease is when people get very tight and they tend to curl up a little bit. So we're trying to prevent those postures from happening because those are painful postures, actually, and it's difficult to move them and to clean them and get inside those spaces when they're tight like that. So there's a lot to do in those later stages. And I'll say that I think the most neglected times during this disease process is in the very beginning and at the very end because that's when people don't recognize the need as much. The other thing that's important to know is, like, later in the disease, there is actually usable brain tissue in there. It's like, a lot of the things that we associate with, good cognition, like memory and emotions and problem solving and, just being able to engage in the environment. When those systems are gone, you think nothing's left. But really, there's a lot of brain tissue left. There's the sensory cortex and the motor cortex actually are one of the last things to go. So you can still provide sensory experiences through touch and smell and taste and vision and hearing. You can still access people, but you just need to know how to get in, like what works and how close do you need to be to their eyes for them to attend to you because it gets closer to you as the disease progresses. So like right up in their face is where you need to put the cupcake so they can see it and smell it and and recognize it, or your face even. If they want to recognize you, you need to get right up there where they can really attend to you. So there's lots of things we can do later on in the disease to access what brain power is still there, and as well as preventing, because prevention is huge too, because a lot of these people don't need to go down the path that they frequently do. And, it's kind of a soapbox I get on about that, but a lot of that stuff's preventable if they're cared for well. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just noting in the chat box, Linda is saying that where her husband is, they don't provide, the pull-ups or Depends, and that she can't afford them, and so then he has these accidents. And I would think there's got to be a way to get that covered because I would think that, that could be a hazard for him to fall. If he's wetting himself, he could slip on the floor from a liability standpoint. So, I don't know, Linda, where your husband, is at, if he's in a memory care or a nursing home or if you're in an assisted living and trying to manage things yourself. It doesn't sound that way. I would really check on that and really question them on that from a safety standpoint. And if, the Depends and the disposables are very expensive. And this Wherever product, they're not cheap, but they're a lot cheaper than the disposables. And, they're not going to fill, they're eco-friendly, all of those types of things too. So I would really push for that, because I would be worried that he's going to fall. Because my mom, in her earlier stages of incontinence, she slipped a couple times in her own urine. And that should be, I would think, a preventable thing that could be looked at and maybe be covered with that. So,
well, sure, and the skin breakdown too. That's a whole other risk right there, sitting in your own wet.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm surprised Medicare would have, or Medicaid might have a program for that. I would think. I'm not sure.
There's got to be something out there, and part of it is us just talking about it and realizing the needs, because I think it's really easy for a lot of communities to just say, no, we don't do that, we never have, and and it takes somebody to stand up and say that's not right, to get things changed, and maybe it's an old policy that needs to be changed. Maybe there are rules and regs that don't allow them to do that. I don't know. There's got to be some type of program out there, and if there's not, there needs to be one. And
right.
Social
Linda,
services needs to hear that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like the Department of Aging or some local government agency might be able to steer you in the right direction. Because there's funds for that sort of thing. Some places, people have different agencies have funds for certain. Not a lot of funds, but maybe for something like that.
Yep, exactly. It can't hurt to try. So, how do people, gain access to rehabilitative services, like occupational therapy and physical therapy? Where do they go? What's the first step?
The first step is the physician. And this is actually a big conversation going on in the Alzheimer's Association and on Capitol Hill as far as trying to allocate funds for and policies of how to get people newly diagnosed into a system that doesn't exist yet, but some system where they're getting the services they need right away. So, the physician right now is the person who is the driver of the machine. So, you talk to the doctor, say, I really want some therapy for my mom or dad or whoever, your loved one. That's the place to start. Sometimes physicians, the older school physicians, and, I used to be of this mindset, so I understand, might think there is no rehabilitation potential here. So you need to frame it in terms of, I'd like them to look at the things I'm concerned about, like their skin or their walking, their falling, their home environment. There's things that, when they think of rehabilitation, they might think of you're trying to make it better, make them better, or make the disease better, but you're really trying to compensate for their deficits. So, it's a lot of education, but I think that the doctor's the first place to start. And then, it might be a trial and error of finding the right therapist as well. It's a new field for all of us to learn how to work with these clients. So, I think you have to start with the doctor and go from there. Yeah. And if you find a therapist that's not cooperating, have them call me.
Well, and you do. Like anything, there needs to be a match there, I would think, because if personalities don't sync, that would make it more difficult to get through the therapy.
Sure.
On that.
It's like getting your hair done. You have to get along with your hairdresser, too,
Yep.
You have to find the right person for you.
Exactly. I did put in the chat box whereverincontinence.com. And, again, since we've gone down that road, I thought I would just provide that link for people as well, something to check out. And I think you'll be surprised just by what they look like. but they're made of specialty materials that are more absorbent, and so they don't have to have the padding all over. And I never believed the commercial when I saw it, where somebody on the red carpet was wearing, I think it was Depends, or maybe I just thought it was Depends in a tight, gorgeous red gown. And I'm thinking, no way, no way. But maybe she was wearing a product like this. I don't know. But I was very surprised. But in looking at it, they look great. They're going to be sending me out a case of different things to kind of check out. So I'll have a better idea when we do the show. But again, another option there for that.
That's great.
Any other questions that our audience have? Again, please type them in. We're coming down to the finish line here with our time frame, and I want to make sure that we get your questions answered. In the meantime, Sue, can you tell us, do you see more people in home, or do you see more people in a community setting? Or a clinic setting? What's the most likely? Do people have to? I know you guys, it sounded like, go to the home as well, but do you see people in clinical settings as well?
Yeah, we follow the gamut pretty much. If somebody has Alzheimer's and they're at home, they're most likely in the early stages. The middle stage folks are the ones who go to an assisted living and memory care unit, and then as their care progresses, maybe to a nursing home. So, yeah, we see people at all levels, in all settings, pretty much. So pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
And I've been doing this long enough that I've pretty much worked in every setting, too, so.
Okay. Is there something that you would like to see that isn't out there right now for occupational therapists dealing with dementia patients? Is there a change that you'd like to see in the system?
Yeah, there's actually. Where to begin? The stigma about Alzheimer's disease is something that the conversation just has to change. It's not an old person's part of aging kind of thing that we don't talk about. It's a disease. It's like a brain tumor. It's an encephalopathy. It's cancer. It's a disease that you need to talk about in the room. Like, okay, you have a disease. What's our plan of attack? And that's where nobody knows what the plan of attack is. There is no guideline for, okay, this is our first step. This is our second step. People are blindly trying to find their way through the system. They're not getting accurate diagnoses. And part of it is there is no pharmacological treatment that's really going to slow it down or cure it, which leads me to my second point that, advocacy and, getting on our legislators to allocate the funds to find the research to, cure this disease is really where it needs to go. I've been compensating for this disease for a long time, and I'm very tired of it. I'm ready just to eradicate it because, the compensation and these little tricks and tips, like I said, they're temporary. They're not solutions. They're Band-Aids. And, although it's my bread and butter, it's not satisfying. It's like, well, what are we going to do? What's a viable treatment option here? How are we going to slow this down? So I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic. I don't think therapists. I think the paradigm is shifting. Like, it is becoming more about giving these people rehabilitative services. It is getting more and more that way. It has to. The whole population's booming into this. The demographics just growing in Alzheimer's disease. So, I think our therapists need to do a better job of finding ways to access people that aren't traditional, they're not conventional. They're worried about being paid because the payers, Medicare and insurances, they're following somebody who broke their leg, and they want to see a nice, steady show of progression up to independence, and it doesn't work that way. So we have to kind of rewrite the norm, of what a normal patient with Alzheimer's disease, because they don't get better, but something might improve incrementally. So let's measure that, and let's, fund that. So I don't know. I have a lot to do. A lot of work to do.
Well, and your passion definitely comes out, and I appreciate that, and I know our listeners do too, because it's our passion that is going to make the changes, and it is going to drive things around the corner and working together. And again, I think having these conversations is really healthy to do. Over in the UK, a lot of their they'll say, we don't really go to the doctor. The nurses come to us. And I'm like, really? And so their nurse block program is very different than ours in terms of what it is that they do. I mean, they have very few clinic appointments, unless it's, to even drawing blood and stuff can be done from the house, and to keep them as comfortable and in sync as possible. And I think, well, that just really makes a lot of sense. I know for my mom, when she went to the nursing home, I always used to bring her to the doctor, and then that started causing stress. What's wrong? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And now she just sees the in-home doctor, and that has just alleviated so much stress, because she would get worked up for days ahead of time. When she was notified. And so I think it's really important for us to look at our service delivery systems and making sure that they meet the needs instead of causing more problems, which I think many times they do with that.
And I think the physicians realize they might not be the best person to they might not be the best person to assess and decide what the plan's going to be, other than, they have their medical things they need to address, but when the patient with Alzheimer's goes to the doctor, they're on their best behavior. They're cleaned up. They say the right things. They can cover it up. There's no insight into what's going on at home, And even when they give them a medication and send them home, there's no way to measure if it's working or not. The doctors aren't the boots on the ground. So I think, like you said, the delivery model needs to be people who are in the home and people who are watching what's going on and are directly in front of the patient all the time. Yeah, physicians agree with me. They don't want the job because they don't think they can do it well.
Well, and especially when they have 10 or 15 minutes, because that's all the insurance says that they can spend with them. They know they're really doing a disservice in a lot of ways, and now they're just plugging in symptoms into the computer, and instead of really having a conversation and digging deeper, with what's going on. And I know for my mom, we started just emailing ahead of time our list of concerns, because I didn't want to spend that time in the consultation going over it. I wanted them to know that when they walked in the door, when our clock started ticking. And that really helped a lot.
Sure.
Plus, it allowed, if we were seeing issues, for them to be addressed in a more respectful fashion, instead of, it looking like I'm tattling. Now they could be brought up in a different fashion, and I wasn't the bad guy. And I know that that's something doctors talk about a lot, that, we want to be able to help you because you have to go home with them. And when you're looking like a tattletale, it just complicates things even more, and the defenses go up, and we're not having as rich of conversation as beneficial, because now it's you against them. And the doctors I know that I've talked to said, let it be me against you guys. You remain as a team intact, and let me help you through this process as the professional. And an outside person, as you know, can say a lot more than a family member can. They can say the exact same words, but they're taken in a totally different light. Well, Sue, it's just been great to have you on the show. Do you have any last tidbits of advice that you want to give people at all?
I just can't stress enough the importance of education and information, and being prepared for what's next down the road. Which I know it's a challenge for caregivers, but they can go to my website. I try to address a lot of this on thedementiaqueen.com. I love questions. I like to, try to help with whatever the pertinent issue is. Yeah, I think it's staying informed and being an advocate when there doesn't seem to be any answers. There probably isn't. So we have to keep hammering away till we find some. So.
Exactly. And for people to reach you, is the easiest is either to go to your Facebook page, which is Dementia Queen. Is that correct?
I have The Dementia Queen on Facebook. My blog is called thedementiaqueen.com, and there's a place to ask questions there. And then my email address is dq@thedementiaqueen.com.
Okay, wonderful. Well, great. Well, thank you for all the work you're doing, and we can really tell that you're passionate and here to help. And I hope our listeners will tap into you and start, ask some questions and engage you in your blog and the resources that you have there. So have a great day, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. And, again, thank you so much for all you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Lori. Thank you very much.
Okay, have a great day now. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
In wrapping up the show today, I just want to remind people again that our next Dementia Chats will be June 25th, and that's at 2 p.m. Central, noon Pacific, and 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Those are free webinars where I interview people with dementia. They are a great resource. Many are using those for family discussions, for support groups, for staff training. So feel free to tap into those. Those are listed on the Alzheimer's Speaks website. And because they've gotten so popular, I will be hopefully within this next week, we'll be getting up our own little tab with Dementia Chats under the About page. But for right now, you can go to the About page and just go under Becoming Dementia Friendly is the easiest segment to find. Just scroll down on that page there. I also want to, again, remind people, if you're looking for a support group, check Alzheimer's Disease International at www.alz.co.uk, and you'll be able to find any Alzheimer's association in the world, and that'll just be a blessing. They've got lots of resources, and of course there's great support groups and information to be found there. Coral Health, again, with music prescriptions, Music First has that app. I had them on the show just a bit ago, and that's a great inexpensive tool that you can use to help people calm down, wake up, all different types of things. And you can find them at www.coralhealth.com. That's CORO health.com. And then the Alzheimer's Studies, again, if you're looking for a clinical trial, they're doing their Tau trial right now. Feel free to check them out as well at the alzheimersstudies.com. And if you want to reach Mary Brett, who was with us earlier, again, you can go ahead and go to her website at www.brettcoaching.com, and she would be more than glad to talk with you and assist you in any fashion. I found today just to be a very fun, fascinating show. I'm going to give one more plug to the Jiminy Wicket group out there for croquet. If you've got an organization and are looking for a fun way to really build smiles and engage on an intergenerational level in an inexpensive, easy fashion, you have to get a hold of James. And just go to www.jiminy, and that's JIMINY, and then Wicket, WICKET.com. The other two that I had mentioned, I'll just go over quick, was the Wherever Incontinence underwear, and then Caring Together, which was that respite resource in Atlanta. So until next time, and next time will be July 7th or July 2nd, when we're going to have the Blondes versus Brunettes and the Heartbeat Lullabies on. We will talk to you soon. Have a blessed week. Bye now.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors, from fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.